Hello, what is up, everybody? My name is Mario Pichardo. The censorship is increasing, it is growing. We're starting to see more and more um, from what we were seeing just even a little while ago. Now, you know, we have YouTubers like Tim Pool. I watch like almost all of his videos, come out and kind of, decry his situation with respect to YouTube. YouTube is taking down a lot of videos from creators. And uh, really, the case that YouTube is making is the fact that, well, these people are either violating privacy concerns or copyright strike or X, Y, and Z. The really the crazy thing about it is just how many industries it's affecting. Because I was just on YouTube the other day and I was watching, because it popped up in my newsfeed, something about Dragon Ball Z, and I was watching this video, and it was like it wasn't even a new video. It was like a couple months old, um, about an anime guy who he makes money, making videos about Dragon Ball Z, or people who make money making uh, fan edits, their fan art, animated fan scenes of Dragon Ball Z, an anime, just cartoons, stuff like that. But they do it in a realistic style so that it looks, kind of like the real thing. And what a lot of people are starting to deal with or face is this kind of demonetization, because YouTube's algorithms are starting to just pick people up who are innocent in a lot of cases. People who have nothing to do with politics. People have nothing. People who are literally just trying to put videos out there talking about historical events like World War II, and literally just mentioning, maybe even in this video, Germany from World War II, uh, gets picked up by the algorithm and immediately demonetizes the video, um, dumps it into a category where it doesn't get recommended, so it doesn't get as much reach. The video fails. Um, and really, what it does is it tries to discourage a lot of people from clearly talking about these subjects, bringing them up. And, we're starting to kind of live in this technocratic fascist future where certain topics can't be covered. We saw, I think his name was James O'Keefe, the guy who runs Project Veritas. And for him, he got his, I think he got either his channel demonetized or he got kicked off the platform entirely. I'm not exactly sure what happened to him, but he faced heavy penalties from YouTube. I think he actually got his channel removed. Um, and what was his crime? He was exposing. He'd spoken to a whistleblower and wrote a story about how Pinterest uh, started to uh, bring uh, censorship onto their platform against Christians and against people who are against abortions. Essentially right wing ideologies at Pinterest, getting completely removed from the platform. And for those of you who don't know, Pinterest is a website associated with, arts and crafts and, things like that. That's really what Pinterest is. It's kind of like a Twitter/Facebook for people who are more artsy in that way. But probably the most eerie thing about it is how widespread you see the issue. Because, we're not just talking about, okay, it's Facebook, it's Twitter, and YouTube. Now, it's in Pinterest. It's in all of these other places. It's starting to go out into all these other, you know, areas, reaches of the internet. Even Reddit is a far left, platform. And, it kind of is starting to become, left. It takes things down. It took a lot of things down through time. And they'll say, oh, well, the moderators, it was this, it was that, it violated our private, it violated this or that. And so what happened with Project Veritas, the James O'Keefe, is he put up a video on or about the whistleblower. And you know what YouTube did? They turned around and they said that this story is a privacy violation for Pinterest. If that's not crazy, then tell me what is. Because, in other words, YouTube is saying that investigative journalism will not be tolerated on their platform. But this precedent, well then what if, another news outlet does that? What if, and I'm kind of joking around here because CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times aren't real news outlets. They're propaganda sources. But let's say the New York Times wants to then break a story. What happened? What about when Rachel Maddow, had a copy of Trump's tax returns on her, and she was talking about it on her show? Are you telling me that if that show is uploaded to YouTube, which I'm sure it has been, that her video is going to be taken down because of a privacy concern related to Donald Trump? No, of course not. Because there's a double standard, and they don't follow through. The leftists, they're complete hypocrites. They say, oh, you can't do this, but then they'll totally, go right back and do it themselves, and no one's holding them accountable. And it's frustrating. It's so frustrating to live in a society where, I can say what I want to say, but the other person can't, or they can say whatever they want, but I have, tape over my mouth. Where it's like, kind of like the saying, rules for thee, but not for me. So with the advance of the censorship coming more and more into light, I think it's inevitable. We're going to see government intervention. It's going to happen. The real question is, how much control is the government going to take with regard to regulation over social media platforms? And the reason that question is key is because, listen, in a quote-unquote democratic system, there's going to come a time when the Democrats retake the House, retake the Senate, retake the presidency. And so the question is, when that happens, what precedent are we already going to have set for the regulations on social media platforms? And are we opening the door for more regulation? And if we allow ourselves to kind of identify terms of, oh, well, we're regulating this because this kind of speech, because that kind of speech, it has to be done very carefully because, if we want to start to define, you can take people off for these reasons, but not these reasons, who's to stop the next person from coming in and expanding that meaning? And now adding hate speech as a stipulation. And now companies are legally binded to remove speech that they find hateful. They have the legal protection of the government to censor. That's dangerous. It goes without saying that that's incredibly damaging to our people's First Amendment right. And then a lot of people on the left will come out and they'll say, yeah, well, you can't really have freedom of speech when you don't own the platform. It's a privately owned company. YouTube can do whatever it wants to do. Pinterest can censor whoever they want off their platform because they're privately owned. The common counter argument is, yes, well, these places have actually become the public square. In other words, they're the places where public discourse takes place. The majority of the population is not meeting in person today in 2019. A lot of their conversations, a lot of the sharing of ideas is happening over the internet in some way. Either they're streaming or they're sending a video out there. They're sending a tweet. They're going to post a photo on Instagram. This environment has become our form of communication. And so if we take away access to an entire group of people based on their ideology, based on their opinions on certain subjects and areas, well, what does that mean for public discourse? Those people are going to end up going to another place. They're going to find another website. They're going to find another place to go. Now that people will say, oh, well, that's fine. I mean, if, let them go to wherever they want to go. But the company has the right to decide X, Y, and Z about how it's going to do business. And then it's like, well, mind you, these are the same people who say, we have to have a certain minimum wage. We have to have these kinds of rights for people who work in a business. They're totally fine with the censorship part of it, but totally not fine with the pay. These people who don't understand basic economics, they're trying to put their 2 cents into what a company should or should not, be able to allow people to do. They approve of the censorship, just not the pay, and it's like, well, okay. It's kind of like there's a level of a double standard there. There's a level of hypocrisy there. Why can't a business pay its customers whatever it wants to? But I don't want to get off into another tangent. It's just an illustration of the fact that, even in this, there's a double standard there. There's a bit of hypocrisy there. But when you look at, when you look at the case of certain people in our system, you look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's shooting herself in the foot with every tweet. You kind of see you kind of see the reflection of the kind of thinking that people have about how government should be run, about how businesses should be run, but the same people who just don't really have a firm grasp on basic economics, okay? We have to have a certain level of prosperity in a business in order for us to be able to pay people. A lot of Democrats don't understand that. I'm sorry if you're a Democrat. You can be the exception to the rule. I'm not saying it's a blanket statement. All Democrats believe this, but it tends to be a common party line. Oh, got to raise the minimum wage. Well, what happened when we tried to raise the minimum wage? Restaurants in New York had to lay off a lot of other people. They had to lay off, I think it was like 30% of their workforce. I could be wrong. And they reduced, and a lot of other businesses just reduced the hours. Because Democrats don't understand basic, fundamental economics. Okay? Tim Pool talked about this a little earlier. This idea that if I have $30 and it costs me $20 to build a product, get the resources, get all that stuff. It costs me $20 to make it, plus the labor I'm paying you, whatever. All in all, it costs me $20. Or not paying you, just the resource, just to build the thing, just to build a product. Let's say I was building a DVD player, and it cost me $20 to make the DVD player. So I'm going to sell the DVD player for $30. If you come to me and you ask me, hey, I want a $15, I want $15. We sold this DVD player for $30. I want $15. I want half. And I'm going to look at you and say, I can't give you $15. I can't give you a $15 raise, precisely because then we'd be losing money in this transaction. It's only profitable for us if we take a smaller cut. And then you can turn around and then you can turn around and say, well, charge more. Well, no, I can't charge more if every other DVD manufacturer is selling theirs for $20. I can't just turn around and sell mine for $30 so they can pay you more, because fewer people are going to buy it. And if fewer people are going to buy it, you're going to lose a job. You're going to get let go. I can't sustain this business. And that's what's happening with a lot of people when they say raise the minimum wage. Now what you did is you put more people out of work. You reduced the more hours for more people. You think you did a good job, but you didn't understand basic, fundamental economics. That you need to have a certain amount in, you have to make a profit just to be able to pay your bills. You have to make a profit just to be able to pay your bills. We're not even talking about saving for a rainy day. And so a lot of our policies, I think, really have to take into consideration, the reasoning behind conservative principles on a lot of ideas. For example, we say marriage matters. Marriage is important. Having fathers in the home is very important. We live in a society today that doesn't value men. It absolutely does not, in the way that it used to value men 10 decades ago. And yet, when we look at the statistics, and again, even uttering these facts are the kinds of things that can get you taken off of the platform, can get you demonetized, can get your channel taken down, because they'll call it hate speech, whose definition continuously grows. There's no defined set of rules as to what it really means. There's no stopgap where it's like, okay, if you do up to here, this is good, this is fine. In fact, Google's CEO came out and said, we want to make sure that we're even blocking borderline content. That we're even blocking borderline content. In other words, we're going to block content that doesn't violate our rules, but comes close to violating our rules. It's crazy. And so when you look at, if I'm going to look at YouTube and say YouTube is a platform for public discourse, it's not. And you can turn around and say, well, YouTube is the second most visited website, the second most used search engine in the entire internet. And so, and what is YouTube? YouTube is a collection of videos. It's sharing information, with audio and with a visual stimulus. That's what YouTube is. It's a method, a means of communication. You're telling a story. You're sharing a video about your kid. You're sharing a video about a game show, a music video, something. You're trying to, get something out there to share with people. People have turned to it to build careers, to build lives. People from all different industries are being affected because of political reasons. YouTube wanting to say, oh, you can't do this, oh, you can't do that because X, Y, and Z, because I don't want you to. It's wild. I think it's crazy. It's such a crazy environment that we've gone into where it's just the sheer power of these tech companies is insane. The government is turning around and they're saying, let's break up the monopoly. Let's break up Google, because Google has gotten so huge. It has control over so many different aspects of our lives that we need to, in some way, shape or form, kind of tell them, hey, you can only do so much. We're only going to allow you to have so much power. You have people's Gmail. The two most visited websites in the entire world, google.com and YouTube. In other words, YouTube and Google know where people search. They most likely have an ID on everybody. They have an ID on everybody's email. They control Android, so they know they have. So in other words, Google knows everyone in your contact list. Google knows everywhere you've been. Google knows where you live. Google knows every place that you visited, when and where and why, if you've ever brought your smartphone with you. And Apple knows the same, by the way. If you have an iOS app, and Google might still have it because of how integrated the two are. Google knows your purchase history if you bought anything with Google. At Google Pay, they have transaction history for you. They know what you search on YouTube, so they know what you're interested in. It's wild when you take all that into consideration and look at the fact that, well, more and more people are spending time online than ever before. I think the average adult or teenager spends like upwards of 8 hours, or child spends up to 8 hours a day online. Or some crazy statistical number. I mean, it's just huge. It's just such a massive board. Even to spend 3 hours a day on the internet is insane. Okay, 2 hours, even 2 hours is insane when you really think about it. 2 hours every single day. 2 hours, two. That's incredible. Can you do you what you can learn in 2 hours? What you can learn in 15 minutes a day? And now you compare that to how much entertainment people are consuming from the web. It's insane. It's absolutely, it's beyond comprehension what you could do with that. 15 minutes a day, for a year, 2 years, you can learn an entire language. You can start a business. You can open up an entire business. You can learn a new skill, switch jobs. And so Google has all this power, and they have all this information on so many different people. Google knows where you live. They know everything about you. And for better or worse, this is the state. This is the state that we're in. And so the government's turning around and they're saying, listen, you're a little too big, buddy. We're going to have to break you up. And then they should. Because especially with the censorship, there's a website run by Mike Adams, the health ranger, naturalnews.com. And look, I even as I say that, I think to myself, unfortunately, I hope I don't get censored. I hope I don't get demonetized. I'm not big enough to be demonetized, but the thought still run through your head. I hope I don't get shadow banned. I hope I don't get deplatformed, simply because I say certain words or try to talk about certain things. I mean, look, this is what the 21st century has become. As of today in 2019, you have to watch everything you say. YouTube demands that you watch everything you say, or they're going to punish you. How dare you have an opinion that disagrees with us? Well, unfortunately, it's become the public square. So, listen, if there's another platform that I could go to, I absolutely would. But the fact of the matter is, everyone's on YouTube. everybody and their mothers on YouTube. Now, the argument could be made, go to another platform, but currently right now it's not a viable option. It's not. You can go onto another platform, but you're not going to pick up as many people, nowhere near. Your reach is so much smaller. And so, we'll see what happens, but we need a certain level of government intervention. I'm just hesitant to say what that will actually be, because something has to be done to balance out the playing field. But at the same time, we have to be careful of exactly what we decide to now legislate or have control over. Because whatever we decide is going to impact the lives of a lot of people. And so, of course, we would not want to give all that power away to any company. It doesn't matter that it's Google. It doesn't matter if it's Facebook or anybody else. No one should have that much power over the public discourse. And what we are starting to see is people are, kind of paying attention, and they kind of are moving to other places. You see Parler, for example, which is like a free speech version of Twitter, has, started to see a large influx of people from Twitter because of Twitter's own censorship of conservatives, their overt censorship, because they, of course, have a certain ideology. And whether you want to say that it's backed by other, like George Soros or what have you, the fact remains that, regardless of whatever the cause is, these companies have proven themselves to have too much control. And hopefully this move to Parler scares these companies enough to kind of back off. Or probably, better yet, encourages people to continue to move on. Go to another platform, try something else out, because these companies have proven that, well, they don't have your best interest in mind. In fact, YouTube actually lost money, I think an incredible amount of money for their investors, because of their political movements inside of YouTube. And see, that's where it kind of gets a little weird, because we know from leaked internal docs that, like after the Hillary Clinton election, this internal, I think it was a recording, like an audio recording, releases from inside of Google, from the higher ups, the managers, executives, talking about the election and how they'd lost, and they were so upset that Hillary had lost. And, these are the same people who are in charge of two of the largest search engines in the entire world, YouTube and Google. And, when you kind of hear that kind of story, when you hear about that kind of stuff, I can't help but feel, maybe we're better off in another platform. Maybe we're better off at Parler or BitChute or Minds.com, or a lot of these new websites are popping up, Brighteon, and others, because at least at these places, we know we don't have to deal with a management team or executive team, an employee workforce that is overtly, biased towards one side. Or at least that they're so biased that they'd be willing to censor their opposing group at viewpoint. Now, I talked about this in another video, but But the thing with, one of the big things that I've noticed with these companies is the fact that, while you'll have a Facebook or you have a Twitter, and they'll come in and they'll say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't um, do this. So we'll have some kind of intervention. We'll have some kind of government step in, something to really kind of come to the forefront of this issue and kind of say, well, we're going to do something about it. Hopefully it works out. Hopefully people decide to turn around and say, you know what, Facebook is just not, they've not proven themselves to be credible. There's not a real reason for us to stay around here. Let's go to minds.com. Let's go to Parler. Let's go to Brighteon. Let's go to one of these other websites and have our discourse there. Share our family photos there. Do something else there, because at least then you kind of speak to the market, and the market, at some point realizes we have to have people on our platform if we want to be viable, in this way, if we want to really be serving the community instead of pushing our own agendas. YouTube was hemorrhaging viewers when they started to purge conservatives off their platform. They knew that they were going to lose money. They knew it, but it's Google. They can make their money back on the backs of anything else. I mean, they make so much. They make that much money. Google started when they started to remove conservative content. Well, conservative content was one of their top three things that people watched on YouTube. In other words, a lot of the revenue came from that specific sector that they started to get rid of. And so their investors felt the brunt of that, because the stock price, I think, went down a little bit as a result of Google not putting their investors first the way that you would have expected that they would. They decided to say, hey, I'm going to just do this way because it serves our political ideology, which I think is incredibly sketchy. Why is a company not acting in the best interest of its investors? The whole reason that it exists. Why is this company going rogue and deciding, to be moral arbiters of truth, of what's right, of what's just, and then imposing that ideology on a group of other people? So I can't say for sure why it happened. I remember right around the time when the really censorship started to ramp up was when a bunch of companies, quote unquote, got together and said, oh, we don't want this kind of content on our platform. And so YouTube kind of went with that, and they kind of started to say, hey, most of our advertisers are not okay with this kind of content, and so we're going to demonetize or limit the number of ads on this on your website, on your channel, because this content is not advertiser friendly. And so they ran that whole gambit. And I don't remember, but it was around that time. I think it was before it even happened. I was reading somewhere that, that this kind of thing had been orchestrated and had been going on for a while. It's my impression that that whole kind of move, that whole original move, with regard to advertisers, wasn't really about the content that was being shared and the advertisers feeling uncomfortable about the content. Like, the advertiser it's not that they were afraid of the content, it's that they had another motive of wanting to censor certain kinds of speech. And it's like, okay, well, why do I say that? It sounds like a conspiracy. Well, I don't remember exactly where I heard it or how. I just remember having that idea and then seeing it actually coming, because I just read it somewhere. But, for us to think that there aren't, a bunch of men in a room who decide, what kind of movements they want to make on a world stage as to what people will have access to and what speech will be allowed, so on and so forth. I think it's a very ignorant position to assume that that's not happening. Because again, I think when we look at the world stage, we have a lot of global conferences of huge titans kind of getting together and deciding these very things that we're talking about. Who's to say secret societies don't exist? Who's to say, the Bilderberg meetings aren't what we're being told that they are? I mean, there's no, who are we going to trust? The Washington Post, the New York Times, that these groups and organizations? I'm skeptical, to say the least. And so, I think that when we look at it from that point of view and kind of try to expand our meaning and not kind of try to look at each group as in a silo, especially if we're Christian, because as Christians, we know that, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual power in high places. We know that there's more going on behind the scenes than what looks like is being played out on a very, secular level. So, I hope we can get more, kind of a more stable environment. We can get into a place where people can just have discourse, where they can just talk about the issues. They can just talk things through without having to have an organization deciding what right and wrong is going to be. Are these companies platforms or are they publishers? And let's hold them to whatever decision that they're going to choose to make. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What do you think should happen? What do you think our response to what is going on should be? Sharing my own thoughts. You guys already know what I think. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're watching this on a podcast platform, or what have you, please feel free to share the video, like the video if you want to support the channel, because any kind of, share engagement shows the algorithm, hey, this video is this person was willing to share this video on their own feeds. This must be good. Let's boost it so more people get exposed, so on and so forth. So like the video, share the video, comment on it. Let me know what you guys think, so on and so forth. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Everybody take it easy now. Have a good night. Peace.